My talk is called Sustainability in Practice. And as I said, I am a multimedia consultant now for Penn State Teaching and Learning with Technology, formerly the social media and digital assets manager for the College of Arts and Architecture. And I am still affiliate faculty in the Department of Art History, and I teach classes for them and sometimes for the professional photography major. So today what I'm going to talk about is a couple of different things. And the first is pedagogy. My art history class is entirely digital now, everything from the syllabus to all of the assignment submissions, including creating a virtual reality exhibition for their final project. So everything we do is digital, and they learn how to create digital marketing campaigns and museum campaigns for kind of more of an online community. And that's been a really big transition, but it's been really successful because the students are very familiar and comfortable in that digital setting. And so everything is submitted online, and everything is in that way more sustainable. The other class that I taught this past spring that I tried to incorporate more sustainable practices into was fashion photography, as well as the professional photography major. And so with fashion photography, it had more to do with sustainable practice in photography, and with the professional photography internship program, it had to do more with data management and how to store files, how to work with your digital assets properly. And so here's a picture of one of my students during my fashion photography class, and this was actually a module that had to do with upcycled clothing and sustainability in our world, and how we make sustainability fashionable, right? And how we make upcycling a type of fashion that people would want. And so we actually brought in a former student who is a fashion designer to bring the clothes that he had thrifted and upcycled into his own brand. And we modeled those clothes as a way to help him launch his fashion brand with our images that we took. And so some of it was for promotion, but also it was about awareness of these sustainable practices. We also had someone come from a company representing sea wool, which is wool created from recycled oyster shell pellets. And it's actually Tom Nodell, Erica Nodell from Art History's husband, who helps represent sea wool and some of these companies that are sharing it. And one of those companies actually was on Shark Tank. And so it's also talking about the sustainability and the fashion kind of industry. And so they grind up these oyster shells into pellets similar to plastic pellets, and they spin it into very durable wool. And so even just kind of figuring out how different companies are using sustainability in order to make fashion more sustainable is also an important way to share with the students that kind of understanding of what they're engaging with. Also, I had a lot of students who were interested in doing film photography and talking about the chemical processes and the proper disposal of chemicals, as well as printing process related to that. We kind of went over best practices for that, as well as new and environmentally friendly ways to also develop film without the whole process of using, toxic water, chemicals to be able to get your film there. And so we also kind of go into this idea of, is film photography or analog photography more or equally damaging to the environment, or how do you make those decisions when you're sharing your work? And so it turns out that it depends, because if you're storing all of your things in ways that aren't actually that sustainable, then you're also kind of using energy in keeping multiple copies of things, or these are server farms that you see here, which do take a lot of energy. And we talk about kind of how storage is another issue, not to mention the manufacture of different digital photography camera parts that have to do with like lead and things like that in them. And so a lot of companies are actually transitioning their work. We also use recyclable batteries for like our flashes and things. We have rechargeable and recyclable battery programs that we would use for our photography, especially for the students working with me on the internship. And also just how to properly recycle or redistribute the technology that you no longer need. And so there are ways to also do that. And so that was another thing. And the good news is that these things are getting better, right? Nikon, Sony, and Samsung are also phasing out a lot of the toxins in their products, and Canon also doesn't use lead anymore. So it's also an interesting transition because Canon's now making cameras from recycled cell phone parts and materials. So rather than that mining that happens in order to use these things for new technology, they're trying to recycle those things. And so just making my students aware of that's been really important. And in practice now with what I do, I work with the Media Commons, which means I also work with a lot of 3D printing and 3D, kind of prototyping for different objects. And so we use PLA, which is a plastic, but it's actually made from sugarcane and other recyclable materials, and it's biodegradable. But we also recycle it with a company called TerraCycle, and we recycle the envelopes, and we make smaller scale prototypes so that the students are able to use less materials in prototyping for like their engineering classes and everything. We also have Arduino kits and camera equipment that use rechargeable battery packs that we've purchased, or like those kind of charging cells, so that we don't use as much and we can keep recharging those without having to use batteries. We also have One Button Studios here in the library. If anyone's seen those, it's where the students can record their videos, and we have computers for them. But we've even transitioned to digital remotes that plug into the keyboards that we charge so that we don't have to use batteries there. And so just this idea of how all of these things are beneficial for our practices, as well as using like the screens and digital photography for sharing messages. So rather than having paper waste by creating signage, we use digital signage or digital photography on our screens so that we're not wasting there either. And then just kind of talking and figuring out how is it that we can make something using a 3D printer or using one of the materials that we have versus purchasing something new. And so we just 3D printed some doorstops for the library the other day that are shaped like Nittany Lion heads, which is kind of neat. We also have a Maker Commons, which has upcycling capabilities. So we have dye sublimation printing, as well as a Cricut machine, which does vinyl and everything, but it also allows you to cut cardboard. And so we use a lot of recycled cardboard in our work, and we show students how to use the equipment using recycled materials. So we are actually using things that are allowing students to kind of take some of that potential, cardboard or things that could be either recycled or thrown away and make them into new types of works. And the same with the 3D prints. If somebody makes a 3D print that they don't like or the prototype doesn't work, we keep them and either recycle them or use them as teaching tools or to give away to students. We have like a free table of 3D prints that people might be inspired by and want to also use or take. And so in practice, that's kind of how it works. And you can see here, this is the Maker Commons and one of the kind of works made on the Cricut cutting kind of machine so that you can kind of see how this works with it. And so this is part of what we do. And as far as promotion goes, here's some of our recycled PLA here that we have. And it's quite interesting to kind of learn about all this stuff myself, because I was always interested in it, but learning how we can do it as sustainably as possible is really great. And also how we make sure that we, have the signage here in the library for students to make sure that they recycle their extra, support parts on their 3D prints, as well as to, bring back anything they don't want. As well as we're doing this on our social media pages for the Media Commons and for TLT as well. So just making sure that people are aware of all the opportunities that they have here within what we're doing. And so most of all, come visit me. If you're interested more in kind of what we do here at the Media Commons, or if you've never been here before, you can visit our website to see all of the things that we offer on mediacommons.psu.edu, but you can also come to the library. It's right around the corner from the Knowledge Commons in Petit on the first floor. So if you come in, rather than going to Starbucks, you take a right and you can come over here, and I can give you a tour of all of the different possibilities, and you can see some of these things in action. So thank you for having me, and I'm really excited to start sharing all of these new things with you, as well as staying in connection and being able to kind of work together in different ways.